Not that I have seen the agreement as such, but definitely the communique was clear. They said the host government agreement had been signed, the tariff transportation agreement had been signed, and the shareholders agreement too had been signed. So just like anyone who's been to school on these matters, you would basically understand what are the general bits and pieces that are always enclosed in such documents. First and foremost, the host government agreement, as its name suggests, is an agreement between a government that hosts the investor, who basically is looking out for having a pipeline run through their state. So Uganda's pipeline going to move from Hoima all the way to Tanga, traverses two countries. So you have Uganda, where it traverses about 10 districts and runs for about 200 and towards 50 kilometers, and the larger part on the Tanzanian side. So basically what you have is that the thing that basically set the ball rolling, if I could basically bring the breadth of where this has been coming from, where it is and where it is headed to, is that you had the two governments. Maybe I should just step back a little bit and explain, because you basically have oil developments going to happen in Uganda. You definitely need an evacuation point for this kind of crude. When you have it on top of the ground, then you must take it out. So you have two evacuation points in this case, which is a refinery in Hoima, planned refinery in Hoima, about 60,000 barrels. And then you have a heated pipeline, which is going to be the longest in the world, apparently. So 1,443 kilometers, running all through from Hoima to the border and then to Tanga. So the two countries where this pipeline passes basically had to arrive into some kind of arrangement and agreement of sorts. And that is what actually got us getting into what they call an IGA, an intergovernmental agreement. Now, this intergovernmental agreement manages the relationship between the two countries, or if there are three, or whichever number they are, where the pipeline basically traverses. Then after that, you get details, because IGA is government to government, so it's kind of high level. So then you go down and break it down country to country. So you have Uganda negotiating a host government agreement, because it's hosting the SPV and the pipeline, the SPV being the special purpose vehicle, which is basically going to own the pipeline. And this will be a number of shareholders. So you have Uganda represented by the Uganda National Company. You have Tanzania represented by the Tanzanian Petroleum Development Corporation. And then you have Total and CNOOC. So these form themselves into a special purpose vehicle, which owns the pipeline, owns and runs it. Now, then they will have to get into a host government agreement, which was signed yesterday for the case of Uganda, which definitely defines exactly what relationship Uganda would have with the SPV, the company that owns the pipeline. So here you have things like, this is who we are, these are the things we gave you a host of a physical regime, physical favors, so that basically all these would be aimed at keeping the cost of the pipeline proper relative to keep the project commercially viable in the eyes of everyone. Well, so the host government for Uganda, the host government for Tanzania, and after you've had those, you have those details, then what was signed yesterday, the two agreements, the TTA and the SHA, the tariff transportation agreement and the shareholders agreement operationalize the IGA and the HGA, and with these, you basically set the ground for the companies and their respective shareholders to go home to their boards and make a final investment decision. If the pipeline starts taking out crude, if it is operational, if you have this FID running, if you have the construction on, the National Oil Company of Uganda, which will be holding a 15% share in the pipeline, will definitely start earning some money. The government will start earning some money.
Less than it would have earned if we had a refinery.
But what I'm trying to drive at is that, you see, by arriving at this FID, you are de-risking other projects in the value chain. Now, today, as we speak, if you walked to the bank and you're a national oil company, you want to hold 40% shares in the refinery project, they will ask you, where are your books? What are your cash flows like? Now, 2 years down the road, when you have a pipeline running and you have money coming into your books, you are a better negotiator for a better rate, and you can sit on the table of men, like they say, because you have some money, you're speaking. Today, as we speak, UNOC does not have cash flows. The moment it becomes a shareholder and it is earning 15% of whatever exporting money, with that cash flow, the national oil company can walk to a bank and say, I want to build a refinery, and they will listen to him. The company, as of today, is basically the FID and the pipeline running de-risks the refinery project in a way. Number two, Honorable Karuhanga was explaining why it's a business we arrive at this from a business discussion and perspective. Uganda at peak, of course, you start producing and getting at peak because, different wells come on stream at different times. But let's say at peak, when every well is on stream, you're producing about 210,000 barrels per day. If you are refining 210,000 barrels per day in Hoima, 200,000 per day, let's say that is input. Basically, of course, you have input and output depending on the efficiency of your refinery. If it's a greenfield refinery, you're doing very well at about 98% of the efficiency. But then Uganda, as of today, as we speak, consumes only about 38,000 barrels per day. Now, if your output at 210,000, you're producing at an efficiency rate of 98%, you're producing
Yet
about...
Uganda has a capacity to export.
Yes, you'd export...
To South Sudan,
to South Sudan,
to Congo.
Rwanda, to Congo, to the hinterland. Yes, yes, but there's more to that. You see, you have to produce, number one, but what happens, for example, is what they call putting all your eggs in one basket. So you are safer commercially to have a pipeline and a refinery. So you have a 60,000 going to the refinery, you have...
Concurrently,
yes.
But what would precede the other?
No, whoever, because you see, we have a memorandum which says that the companies are in charge of making sure that the pipeline is in place, whereas the government was in charge of making sure that the refinery is in place.
Katta, I want to bring in Dr. Eli Karuhanga, but our initial intention as Uganda was to produce our own oil, not to be a crude oil exporter. How did we veer off? Yes, as you bring in Honorable, that's exactly what I wanted to explain. First and foremost, the people the development partners, the banks, the shareholders, these are businessmen. They will ask you, look, what happens, for example, God forbid, if the refinery had a problem? What happened, for example, let's forget about the God forbid. What happens, for example, if the refinery is undergoing maintenance, downtime? That means you're going to close the pipe. You're going to close the taps. You're not producing oil because the refinery is going through maintenance. So you're safer if you have a refinery and a pipeline. If one of them is undergoing maintenance, you're able to move. For example, one of the issues that people raised why they did not want to go to Lamu, some of these oil companies, is because of the monsoon winds. The monsoon winds on Lamu would actually hold, the ship would not dock at Lamu during that time for 21 days. What that exactly means commercially is that you are either going to build storage for 21 days at Lamu, or you're going to stop production in Hoima, Tirenga, and Kingfisher for 21 days. It doesn't make sense. So you must apportion risk commercially to actually have a commercially viable project.